tenant rights group in Washington state wants to pass legislation that would make it almost impossible for landlords to evict tenants 9 months a year. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today. It's coming out of Washington state. Now, I talk a lot about Washington state. It is a very difficult place to be a landlord. And you know what? I personally wouldn't invest there. But, there's a lot of good landlords up there right now. And they're fighting what appears to be a losing battle against all of the far left-leaning progressives who are pushing socialist policies where the government basically has total control over your private property. And I am against that, okay? I don't think that the government is the best decision maker when it comes to setting rent levels or deciding who can or cannot be evicted. Okay, so yeah, it's a nightmare for the landlords up there. I really do feel for you, especially those who maybe started off a long time ago before the laws and the political climate up there really started to change. So I found this article. Basically, they're going over what this tenant rights group in Olympia, Washington, what they believe are like laws that they want to see landlords being stuck under. Okay, and they're very anti-landlord laws. They are the kind of stuff that would basically bankrupt small mom and pop landlords and make it darn near impossible to evict even the worst of tenants who aren't paying any rent for the majority of the year. Like they would just have a free ride. And I'm totally opposed to it because, we've seen the nightmare of what happened with the whole eviction moratorium nonsense where landlords weren't able to evict anybody until those moratoriums were lifted. And what did we see? We saw people who were going bankrupt, landlords going bankrupt, who are losing their properties to foreclosure, who were losing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to corrupt, evil, greedy tenants who are taking advantage of this whole situation. And that's exactly what's going to happen when they write this stuff permanently into the law. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So I just am curious, right? I know that there is a lot of talk about what's going on up in Washington state when it comes to eviction protections, etc., right? And so what do you think of a law that says that, hey, we can't evict students during the school year, okay? Keep in mind that most people have families and most people have kids, so that would block you off from being able to evict anybody for the majority of a year. If you can't evict a kid during the school year or, a teacher during the school year. But I can't believe that they would even propose such a ridiculous thing, but whatever, okay? Let's get into the article. I want to go into the details of what they're saying and tell you what my opinion is of this whole thing. This article is coming from thejoltnews.com, and it says, Olympia for All advocates for landlord fairness code as rental inflation outpaces wage growth. Landlord fairness, right? I'd be willing to bet that a landlord fairness code has absolutely nothing in it that is actually fair for landlords. Anyway, let's see what the article says. In response to the rising rental increases and housing crisis in Olympia, a group called Olympia for All is pushing for a measure adopting a citizens' initiative they call a Landlord Fairness Code, which they say is a modest, reasonable set of reforms to slow down the cost of rent and reduce housing instability in the community. Now, they think it's modest, right? But I don't understand how trampling on someone's property rights and violating the Constitution of the United States is a modest proposal. I mean, really here, what are we talking about? So let me go over, they have listed here what the initiative does. This initiative aims to protect tenants by requiring landlords to comply with tenant protection laws before raising the rent or evicting a tenant, prohibiting unfair or excessive fees, requiring landlords to provide notice of rent increases and pay relocation assistance when significant rent increases require tenants to relocate, prohibiting certain student/school year cold weather evictions, and evictions based upon a tenant's status as a service member, first responder, senior, family member, healthcare provider, or educator, and providing penalties and other enforcement mechanisms. So let me break all this stuff down one by one, because, a lot of this is the sort of stuff that we've already seen in other places. And it's just, they're kind of putting it all together here. And I'm going to tell you exactly why I believe each little point of this is wrong. Now, they talk about this being a modest and reasonable set of reforms, and they call it the landlord fairness, right? But all of this, like none of this is anything that is additional responsibilities upon the tenant. All of this is additional stuff that the landlord must comply with. So by its very nature, it is unfair. So the first thing they say is requiring landlords to comply with tenant protection laws before raising the rent or evicting a tenant. So you must comply with all of these ridiculous laws before you can raise the rent. So what it looks like to me is they are trying to kind of backdoor a bit of rent control up in this, right? And also eviction protections. Now, they're like, oh, well, if you're violating the law as a landlord, why should you be able to raise the rent on a tenant, right? And here's my argument. The tenants, the bad tenants, the ones who take advantage of the situation, will claim that the landlord is violating the law just so they can get out of getting evicted, okay? So they are trying to make excuses of, oh, well, I didn't pay the rent because the landlord didn't do repairs or something, right? Even though there's no evidence that the landlord did anything wrong, or the landlord harassed me, or, basically they just want to get something for free. They want to win and punish their landlord. So they make up lies and excuses with zero evidence. And so now that would take the tenant's word over, the landlord's, and force the landlord to be able to prove that they are innocent before they be able to raise their rents or evict the tenant. That's stupid. Oh, man. Prohibiting unfair or excessive fees. Well, who decides what is an unfair or excessive fee? That's the question. And because if you ask a tenant rights advocate what an unfair or excessive fee would be, they would say any fee is unfair or excessive. If you charge me any fee, a penny, that's unfair and that's excessive. I am not joking. They believe all fees are unfair and excessive. So a landlord can't win in a situation like that. They would have to just drop all of their fees, and in my mind, there is no such thing as an unfair fee or excessive fee as long as you notify the tenant about those fees while they're signing the lease. If you agree to that, if you sign on the dotted line and say, hey, yeah, if I pay rent late, I'm going to pay $1,000 a day. Well, you signed there. Only a moron would do that. If you're the moron who did that in order to get housing, that's on you. Okay, it might seem excessive, but when you signed, you were 100% in agreement with it. So how is it excessive? It's not. Requiring landlords to provide notice of rent increases and pay relocation assistance when significant rent increases require tenants to relocate. So, yeah, they basically want landlords to pay tenants to leave if they raise the rent too much. Well, here's the problem with that, right? First of all, what is an excessive rent increase? Okay, to some tenants, if you raise their rent $5 a month, that is excessive. And so then the landlord will be forced to pay relocation expenses. So I think the goal with these laws is that basically the tenant gets a free paycheck if they decide to move. Okay, that's garbage. You shouldn't. And what is the result of that going to be? The landlord's going to have to charge higher rent with the knowledge that, hey, I'm probably going to have to pay this person something when the time comes that they want to leave. So I have to charge a higher rent because of that. Prohibiting certain student school year cold weather evictions and evictions based upon a tenant's status as a service member, first responder, senior, family member, healthcare provider, or educator. Now, think about that, right? Think about that for a minute. Okay, that is a lot of, like prohibitions on people who can be evicted. Like they say, prohibiting student/school year cold weather evictions. Okay, like cold weather could be, I mean, you could literally be like, okay, from October, like halfway through October, all the way until April, it's cold. So therefore, no evictions during that entire time period. But then we could say, don't forget the school year stuff. Okay, so they said, okay, no school year evictions either. So from August all the way until May of the next year, no evictions for anybody who has any connection to the school whatsoever. If you're the school janitor, no eviction for you while the school year is going on. But that's not all, okay? Then they said, we're going to prohibit evictions for people who might be a service member. Oh, you're in the Army Reserves. Nope, can't evict you. First responder. Oh man, you are a firefighter, a police officer, or you drive an ambulance, right? Nope, no evictions for you. A senior. Oh, you're over the age of 60. No evictions for anyone over the age of 60. A family member of any of those people. Wow. Nope, none of them. I mean, you're the ex-wife of a senior citizen who is a EMT. Nope. A healthcare provider or an educator. So basically, we've carved out like 90% of the population here with these exceptions who can never be evicted. 90% of the population. I mean, this is essentially an eviction moratorium that they've written, and they think that this is a smart idea. Okay? What a joke. What a joke. You know what? They could throw this garbage out right now. And then providing penalties and other enforcement mechanisms. So yeah, if the landlord doesn't comply with this garbage, guess what? We're going to fine the landlord. Fine them thousands of dollars. Put them out of business, right? But you know what? These laws themselves will put landlords out of business. So I'll put a link to the article in the description down below. Let me know in the comments what you think of what I just went through here, okay? This is absolutely ridiculous. It probably won't see any traction, but we're going to see parts of this written into legislation that's proposed in Washington state probably in the near future.